for-profit companies. For tonight's Spotlight conversation, I'm joined by Shannon Heffernan, staff writer for the Marshall Project. She focuses on prisons and jails across the U.S. Thank you so much for being here. We need an education because these private prison companies are already trying to add more beds to meet the government's demands. Explain for our viewers the relationship between these companies and the federal government and the kind of money they are making.
Yeah, so they're making a lot of money. I've sat in on some of the earnings calls. They're ecstatic about what the Trump administration is doing. They're talking about how this is the best moment in the history of their company. And in some cases, they're contracting directly between the federal government and these private detention facilities. But there's also cases when they're using these sort of interesting pass-through contracts where they're actually contracting with local governments who don't run the jails, they don't operate the jails. They're simply doing that pass-through contract so that the federal government can move faster and not use a traditional bidding process.
The LA Times reports that because of the backlash to the immigration raids there, the city of Glendale has ended its contract with ICE to house its detainees. What happens if more cities start doing this?
Yeah, so one way that ICE is finding capacity right now when it's really strained is they're going to local jails and they're saying, can you rent us jail space? And Tom Homan has made it very clear that he's desperate for this space. He spoke at the Sheriff's Association and said, look, we'll do fewer inspections, right? We'll not have as many standards to make it easier for you to house people. So it's clear that they need that capacity. I think where you would maybe see more of a strain is if some of these local entities also say, we're not going to do those pass-through contracts that I mentioned before, since a lot of this capacity is private detention. I think that would leave the federal government scrambling to figure out how they would get those contracts to work then.